It was a quiet Tuesday evening, 15 years since Sheila walked out of my life without so much as a backward glance. The years had dulled the pain, though the memories were still etched in my mind. I'd built a new life for myself, a modest one, sure, but peaceful. That's why, when my phone lit up with an unfamiliar number, I hesitated to answer. Something about the area code felt oddly familiar, yet distant, much like the past I had tried so hard to bury. "Hello?" I said cautiously, half expecting it to be a telemarketer. There was a pause, the kind that stretches just long enough to make you uneasy. And then, I heard her voice. Her voice. "Hi, it's Sheila," she said, her tone uncertain, almost trembling. My stomach dropped. I gripped the phone tighter as a wave of memories came crashing back. Her betrayal, her affair with that married man, the way she left me to pick up the shattered pieces of our marriage while she chased whatever fantasy she thought he could provide. It all flooded my mind like it had happened yesterday. I didn't say anything at first. What could I say? The silence must have unnerved her because she quickly added, "I know I'm the last person you expected to hear from, but I need to talk to you." Her voice cracked slightly on that last word. There was something raw, almost desperate about it. But I wasn't about to fall for whatever game she was playing now. Not after what she had done. "What do you want, Sheila?" I finally replied, keeping my voice as cold and detached as I could manage. I just need a few minutes of your time. "Please," she said. "I know I don't deserve it, but it's important." Important? Important for her, maybe. But for me? I had no intention of letting her back into my life, not even for a second. Still, curiosity is a funny thing, isn't it? Against my better judgment, I stayed on the line. Sheila took a shaky breath. I made a terrible mistake all those years ago, and I know I can never undo the damage I caused. But something happened, and I thought you should know." I couldn't help but laugh bitterly. "Something happened? You mean like the last time, when you tore apart our marriage and left me to figure out what the hell went wrong while you ran off with that guy? What was his name again?" "Oh, right. Gary." The name tasted sour in my mouth. Gary, the married man she'd been sneaking around with behind my back. The man she thought was her ticket to a better life. I had no idea what happened to him after she left. I never cared to find out. "I deserve that," she admitted quietly. "I deserve worse. But this isn't about Gary, and it isn't about me. It's about us. Well, more about you." That caught me off guard. "Me?" I asked, suspicion creeping into my voice. "What are you talking about?" "I need to see you in person," she said. "There's something I have to show you, something I can't explain over the phone." I scoffed. "You've got to be kidding me, Sheila. After 15 years, you think I'm just going to drop everything and meet up with you? Whatever you have to say, just say it now." But she didn't budge. "Please, just this once. I promise, after this, you'll never hear from me again." Her words were almost convincing. Almost. But I wasn't sure if it was anger or curiosity that made me agree. Either way, I found myself saying, "Fine. One meeting. But you'd better make it quick." We arranged to meet the next day at a small cafe in the town where we used to live. As I hung up, I couldn't help but feel a mix of emotions. Anger, resentment, and yes, even a tiny flicker of curiosity. What could possibly be so important that she'd break 15 years of silence? That night, I barely slept. Memories of Sheila kept playing in my mind like a broken record. The day I found out about her affair, the confrontation that followed, the smug look on Gary's face when I tried to confront him. It was all still so vivid. And yet, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something different about her voice tonight. It wasn't just regret. It was something deeper. Fear. Maybe? By the time morning came, I was more anxious than I cared to admit. I arrived at the cafe early, taking a seat in the far corner where I could see the door. I wasn't sure if I was more afraid that she'd show up, or that she wouldn't. At exactly noon, the door swung open, and there she was. Sheila. She looked older, of course, but there was still a trace of the woman I had once loved. She hesitated when she saw me, then slowly made her way to my table. "Hi," she said softly, sitting down across from me. She looked nervous, fidgeting with the strap of her purse. I crossed my arms, leaning back in my chair. All right, Sheila, you've got 5 minutes. Start talking. What she said next made my blood run cold. Sheila's lips trembled as she fidgeted with her hands, clearly searching for the right words. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But then I remembered who I was dealing with. Sheila, the woman who ripped my life apart without a second thought, now sitting across from me like she suddenly had something important to say. I don't even know where to start, she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. How about at the beginning? I shot back, my tone sharper than I intended. You called me. You wanted this meeting. So, start talking. She nodded, swallowing hard. All right, I need to tell you about Gary. At the mention of his name, my jaw tightened. What about him? Did he finally leave you? Or are you here to tell me he's on his deathbed, and you suddenly remembered I exist? Her eyes flickered with something I couldn't quite place. Was it guilt? Fear? Regret? Whatever it was, it made me sit up a little straighter. Gary's dead, she said, her voice shaking. He died 2 months ago. I blinked, caught completely off guard. Of all the things I expected her to say, this wasn't one of them. And this concerns me how? I asked coldly, refusing to let her see even a shred of sympathy. Sheila looked down at the table, avoiding my gaze. Because before he died, he told me something. Something about you. That was enough to get my attention, though I wasn't about to let her see it. Spit it out, Sheila. What did he say? She reached into her purse, pulling out a folded piece of paper. Her hands were trembling as she slid it across the table toward me. He left this for you. I wasn't sure if I should even give it to you, but after what he told me, I didn't have a choice. I stared at the paper, my heart pounding in my chest. Whatever was written on it, I knew it wasn't going to be good. Slowly, I unfolded it, my eyes scanning the scrawled handwriting. It was a short letter, barely a paragraph, but the words hit me like a freight train. Tom, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone. I don't know if Sheila ever told you the truth, but you deserve to know. The affair wasn't what you thought it was. There's something much bigger you've been kept in the dark about. I'm sorry for my part in it, and I hope you can forgive me someday. Gary. I read the letter twice, then a third time, trying to make sense of it. What the hell is this supposed to mean? I demanded, my voice rising. What truth? What bigger thing? Sheila flinched at my tone, her eyes glistening with tears. There's more, Tom. Gary told me everything before he died. And it's not just about the affair. I leaned forward, my patience wearing thin, then stopped dancing around it and just tell me. She hesitated, her hands shaking as she reached back into her purse. This time, she pulled out a small stack of papers. These, she said, sliding them across the table. They're DNA test results. From back then. DNA tests? I repeated, my voice laced with confusion. What are you talking about? Sheila looked at me, tears streaming down her face now. It's about the child, Tom. The one I told you I lost. Her words hit me like a sucker punch to the gut. Memories of that time came flooding back. It was near the end of our marriage when Sheila had told me she was pregnant, only to lose the baby a few weeks later. At least, that's what she claimed. What about it? I asked, my voice low and dangerous. She hesitated, then whispered. I didn't lose the baby, Tom. I lied. I gave birth, and the child is Gary's. My entire body went numb. I felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. You what? I managed to choke out. You had his child? You lied to me about losing it? She nodded, her face crumpling as she broke into sobs. I'm so sorry, Tom. I didn't know what else to do. I was scared, and Gary convinced me it was for the best. We gave the baby up for adoption. I stared at her in utter disbelief, the weight of her confession crashing down on me. For 15 years, I had carried the guilt of thinking I hadn't been there for Sheila during what I thought was a miscarriage. And now, to find out it was all a lie, that she had carried another man's child while I was trying to save our marriage? Why are you telling me this now? I asked, my voice barely more than a whisper. Why after all these years? Sheila wiped her tears, her expression suddenly shifting to something closer to desperation. Because our child, found me, Tom. They found me, and they want to meet you. The room spun. My chest tightened as her words sank in. A child I didn't even know existed wanted to meet me. I pushed back from the table, standing so abruptly that my chair scraped loudly against the floor. I can't do this, I muttered, grabbing my coat. I can't deal with this right now. Tom, wait. Sheila called after me, but I was already walking out the door, my mind racing. I needed air. I needed space. I needed to figure out what the hell I was going to do next. The cold air hit my face as I stepped out of the cafe, but it did little to clear the storm brewing inside me. Sheila's words echoed in my mind. The child wants to meet you. A child I never knew existed. A child she had with another man while still pretending to love me. I walked aimlessly for what felt like hours, trying to make sense of everything. 15 years of silence, and now she drops this bomb on me? It was too much. I couldn't wrap my head around the betrayal, or the consequences. By the time I got home, the anger had started to fade, replaced by something else. Confusion, fear, and yes, I hated to admit it, but curiosity. Who was this child? What did they know about me? Did they even know the truth, that I wasn't their biological father? Or were they living under some delusion that I was a deadbeat dad who had abandoned them? I poured myself a drink, sinking into the worn-out recliner that had become my sanctuary over the years. The whiskey burned my throat, but it wasn't enough to drown out my thoughts. Part of me wanted to pretend the whole conversation with Sheila had never happened, to ignore the letter, the DNA tests, and her confession. But another part of me, one I wasn't proud of, wanted answers. The next morning, I woke up groggy and unrest, the events of the previous day still weighing heavily on me. I stared at my phone, Sheila's number still in my recent calls. I debated for a long time before finally giving in and dialing her back. She answered on the second ring. Tom, she said, her voice tentative. Let's meet again, I said curtly. Today. Same place. She hesitated but agreed. I hung up without another word, already regretting my decision. But I needed to know more. If this child was going to upend my life, I deserved to know the whole story. At noon, I walked into the cafe, spotting Sheila already sitting at the same table as yesterday. She looked like she hadn't slept, her eyes puffy and red. Good, I thought bitterly. She didn't deserve a moment's peace. I sat down without a word, crossing my arms as I glared at her. Start talking, I said. Sheila fidgeted nervously, her hands gripping the coffee cup in front of her. Thank you for coming, she began. I know this isn't easy for you. Cut the crap, I interrupted. You lied to me for years. You don't get to play the victim now. Just tell me what you know. She flinched at my harsh tone but nodded. The child, her name is Emily. She's 14 now. She found me through one of those DNA testing websites. I didn't even know she was looking for me. I stared at her, struggling to process her words. Emily. She had a name, a life, and now she wanted to know who I was. She reached out to me a few months ago, Sheila continued. At first, I ignored her messages. I didn't know what to say. But then she sent me a letter and a photo. She reached into her bag, pulling out an envelope and sliding it across the table. I hesitated before picking it up, my hands shaking as I opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper and a small photograph. The letter was short, written in neat, careful handwriting. Dear Mom, I know this might be a lot to take in, but I've always wondered about where I came from. I don't want to disrupt your life. I just want to understand my story. Please, if you're willing, I'd like to meet you. I'd also like to meet my father if he's willing. Thank you for considering this. Sincerely, Emily. My heart ached as I read the words. Emily sounded kind, genuine, innocent in all of this. And then I looked at the photo. She was a young girl with bright blue eyes and a shy smile. She didn't look like Gary, or Sheila, for that matter. In fact, she looked eerily familiar in a way I couldn't quite place. She's been asking about you, Sheila said softly, pulling me back to the present. I told her the truth, that you weren't her biological father, but that you might want to meet her. I clenched my fists, my emotions warring within me. Anger at Sheila for dragging me into this mess. Sadness for the years I'd lost. And something else, a strange, almost paternal instinct I hadn't felt in years. Why now? I asked finally. Why tell me any of this after all this time? Sheila hesitated, her eyes filling with tears again. Because I'm scared, Tom. Emily deserves to know where she came from. And because I think I'm sick. I froze. Sick? I repeated, my voice barely above a whisper. She nodded, looking down at her hands. I haven't been to the doctor yet, but I've been having symptoms. It's probably nothing, but what if it's not? I don't want to leave Emily with unanswered questions. Her words hit me like a ton of bricks. Sheila, the woman who had caused me so much pain, was now asking for my help, for my understanding. And for the sake of a child I had never met, I wasn't sure I could say no. I stood abruptly, sliding the photo and letter back across the table. I need time to think, I said, my voice tight. Sheila nodded, tears streaming down her face as I walked out of the cafe. This time, she didn't try to stop me. The days that followed were some of the most agonizing of my life. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that photo of Emily, her blue eyes staring back at me with a mix of hope and curiosity. Her letter haunted me, especially the words, I just want to understand my story. I didn't know if I could be part of her story. After all, I wasn't her father. Not really. I wasn't there when she was born. I wasn't there for her first steps, her first words, or her first day of school. Hell, I didn't even know she existed until Sheila dropped this bombshell. But she was innocent in all of this, and no matter how much I wanted to walk away, a part of me felt an undeniable pull to at least meet her. I wrestled with my emotions for days, avoiding Sheila's calls and texts while I tried to sort through the mess she had dumped on me. Finally, after a sleepless night and far too much whiskey, I made my decision. If nothing else, Emily deserved honesty. I wasn't sure I had much else to offer her, but I could at least give her that. The next morning, I called Sheila. She picked up on the first ring. Tom, she said, her voice laced with both hope and caution. I'll meet her, I said bluntly, cutting straight to the point. But this doesn't mean anything between you and me is fixed, Sheila. I'm doing this for Emily, not for you. I understand, she said quickly. Thank you, Tom. You have no idea how much this means to her. We arranged to meet at a park in the city, a neutral place where Emily would feel comfortable. As the day approached, my anxiety skyrocketed. What was I supposed to say to her? How could I possibly explain the tangled web of lies and betrayal that had led to this moment? I rehearsed 1,000 different conversations in my head, none of which seemed good enough. The day of the meeting arrived, and I found myself sitting on a bench near the playground, nervously bouncing my leg as I waited. I had arrived early, hoping to compose myself, but it wasn't working. My palms were sweaty, and my heart felt like it was about to pound out of my chest. Finally, I saw Sheila approaching with a young girl by her side. My breath caught in my throat. Emily looked just like her photo, only now, seeing her in person, I could see even more of the subtle features that reminded me of, well, myself. The shape of her chin, the curve of her smile. It didn't make sense, but there was something about her that felt familiar in a way I couldn't explain. Sheila gave me a small, hesitant wave, and I forced myself to stand. Emily hung back, clearly nervous, her hands gripping the straps of her backpack. I could feel the tension radiating off her even from a distance. Tom, Sheila said as she reached me, her voice soft. This is Emily. I nodded, my throat dry. Hi, Emily, I managed, my voice coming out rougher than I intended. She looked up at me, her eyes wide and uncertain. Hi, she said quietly, her voice barely audible. We stood there for an awkward moment, none of us quite sure what to say. Finally, Sheila broke the silence. Why don't I go grab us some drinks? She said, clearly trying to give us some space. She didn't wait for a response before walking off toward a nearby cafe, leaving me alone with Emily. I sat back down on the bench, gesturing for her to join me. She hesitated but eventually sat, keeping a careful distance between us. So, I began, struggling to find the right words. Your mom said you wanted to meet me. She nodded, her fingers nervously twisting the straps of her backpack. Yeah, I just wanted to know who you were. I've always wondered. I swallowed hard, my heart aching at the vulnerability in her voice. Well, I'm not sure what you've been told, but I'm not your biological father, Emily. That was Gary. I know, she said quickly, surprising me. Mom told me everything. But that doesn't mean you're not, important. Her words caught me off guard, and I felt a lump form in my throat. Important? I echoed, not quite believing what I was hearing. She nodded, her blue eyes meeting mine for the first time. You might not be my biological dad, but you're still part of my story, and I wanted to know that part. I didn't know what to say. For years, I had thought of myself as nothing more than a footnote in Sheila's betrayal, a casualty of her selfish choices. But hearing Emily say those words, it stirred something in me I hadn't felt in a long time. Maybe I did have a place in her life, even if it wasn't the one I had envisioned. We talked for a while, awkwardly at first but gradually finding a rhythm. Emily told me about her life, her school, and her dreams of becoming a veterinarian. She was smart, kind, and far more mature than any 14-year-old had a right to be. And as we talked, I couldn't help but feel a strange sense of pride. Sheila eventually returned with drinks, sitting quietly as Emily and I continued to talk. For the first time in years, I felt something I hadn't expected, a glimmer of hope. That night, as I lay in bed replaying the day's events, I couldn't shake the feeling that meeting Emily was just the beginning. There was still so much I didn't know, so much I needed to process. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like I wasn't completely alone. Little did I know, the hardest truths were still yet to come. The next morning, I woke up feeling a strange mix of emotions. Meeting Emily had been unexpected. It was hard to put into words. I hadn't planned on feeling anything for her, but there was something about the way she looked at me, like she genuinely wanted me in her life, that hit me harder than I cared to admit. I spent the morning trying to distract myself. I cleaned the house, made breakfast, and even attempted to go for a run, but my mind kept drifting back to Emily. And then, just as I was about to sit down with a cup of coffee, my phone buzzed. It was Sheila. Can we meet? There's more I need to tell you. I stared at the message, my stomach twisting. More? What else could she possibly have to say? Part of me wanted to ignore her, but something told me this wasn't the kind of thing I could avoid. With a sigh, I replied, Fine. Same cafe. 1 hour. When I arrived at the cafe, Sheila was already there, nervously stirring a cup of tea. Her face was pale, and she looked more frazzled than I'd ever seen her. Whatever this was about, it wasn't going to be good. All right, Sheila, I said, sitting down across from her. You've got my attention. What is it this time? She glanced around, as if making sure no one could overhear us, then leaned in closer. Tom, I need you to listen carefully. What I'm about to tell you, it's going to be hard to hear. I frowned, my patience already wearing thin. Just spit it out, Sheila. I don't have all day. She took a deep breath, her hands trembling as she gripped her teacup. Emily isn't Gary's child. The words hit me like a freight train. For a moment, I thought I'd misheard her. What? I said, my voice low and dangerous. She's not Gary's, Sheila repeated, her eyes filling with tears. She's yours, Tom. I stared at her, my mind racing. This had to be a joke. A cruel, twisted joke? That's impossible, I said. You told me, no, you swore, that the baby wasn't mine. You said it was Gary's. I know, she said, her voice breaking. I lied. I didn't know how to tell you the truth back then. Things were already falling apart between us, and I thought it would be easier if you believed the baby wasn't yours. Easier? I repeated, my voice rising. You thought it would be easier to lie to me? To let me believe I wasn't the father of my own child? I was scared. Sheila cried, tears streaming down her face. I was scared you'd hate me, scared of what it would mean for us. And by the time I realized how wrong I was, it was too late. I didn't know how to fix it. I felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. Emily was mine? All this time, I'd been living with the belief that Sheila and Gary had a child together, and now she was telling me that wasn't true? Do you have any idea what you've done? I said, my voice shaking with anger. Do you have any idea what it was like for me, thinking I wasn't good enough, thinking I couldn't even hold onto my own wife, let alone my family? I know, she whispered, her voice barely audible. I know I've ruined everything, but Emily, she deserves to know the truth. And so do you. I stood up abruptly, the chair scraping loudly against the floor. You don't get to play the martyr here, Sheila. You destroyed us. You destroyed me. And now you want me to just forgive you because you've decided to tell the truth 15 years later? She didn't say anything, her shoulders shaking as she sobbed into her hands. I didn't care. I couldn't care. Not right now. I turned and walked out of the cafe, my mind a whirlwind of emotions. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about Emily, my daughter. She was mine. Every memory of our conversation at the park took on a new meaning. The way she smiled, the way her eyes lit up when she talked about her dreams. It all made sense now. She wasn't just some stranger's child. She was my child. But how was I supposed to deal with this? How could I possibly build a relationship with her after everything Sheila had done? And what would Emily think when she found out the truth? Would she hate me for not being there? Would she hate Sheila for lying? The questions swirled in my mind, each one heavier than the last. I needed answers, but I wasn't sure if I was ready for them. All I knew was that my life would never be the same. The next day, I made a decision. I couldn't change the past, but I could decide how to move forward. I picked up my phone and dialed Sheila's number. When she answered, I didn't waste any time. I want to meet Emily again, I said. But this time, we're telling her the truth. All of it. Sheila hesitated, but eventually, she agreed. All right, she said. I'll set it up. As I hung up the phone, I felt a strange sense of determination. I didn't know how Emily would react, but she deserved to know the truth. And for the first time in a long time, I was determined to do the right thing, even if it meant facing the fallout head-on. The morning of the meeting, I felt like my heart was trying to hammer its way out of my chest. The weight of what Sheila and I were about to tell Emily pressed down on me like a boulder. I hadn't slept much the night before, running through every possible scenario in my head. Would she hate me? Would she hate Sheila? Or worse, what if she rejected me altogether? The meeting was set to take place at a quiet park near Emily's school. Sheila and I agreed to meet her together, though the thought of spending any more time around Sheila made my blood boil. She had lied to me, lied to Emily, and now it was up to both of us to untangle the web of deceit she'd spun. When I arrived, Sheila was already there, standing under a tree with Emily beside her. Emily looked nervous, clutching her backpack like it was the only thing keeping her grounded. I felt a pang of guilt as I approached, knowing what we were about to do would shatter her sense of reality. Hi, Tom, Sheila said softly as I reached them. I ignored her, turning my attention to Emily. Hey, I said, forcing a smile. Thanks for meeting me again. Emily smiled back, though it didn't quite reach her eyes. Of course. I wanted to see you again. Her words sent a wave of warmth through me, but it was quickly tempered by the gravity of the situation. I glanced at Sheila, who gave me a small nod. It was time. Emily, I began, my voice steady but firm. There's something we need to tell you. Something important. She tilted her head, her expression a mix of curiosity and apprehension. What is it? I took a deep breath, my hands clenched into fists at my sides. You've been told that Gary was your biological father. But that's not true. He wasn't your father. I am. The words hung in the air like a thunderclap, and for a moment, Emily just stared at me, her face a blank slate. Then, slowly, her eyes widened as the meaning of my words sank in. You're my dad, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Yes, I said, my throat tight. Sheila lied to both of us. She told me you weren't mine. and she told you that Gary was. But the truth is, you're my daughter, Emily." Emily turned to Sheila, her expression shifting from shock to anger. "You lied to me," she demanded. "All these years, you lied about who my dad was?" Sheila's face crumpled, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I'm so sorry, Emily. I thought I was doing what was best at the time. I was scared, and I didn't know how to fix it once the lie started." Emily took a step back, her hands trembling. "You let me believe he didn't care about me. You let me think Gary was my dad, and all this time, it was him?" She pointed at me, her voice rising with emotion. I stepped forward, desperate to ease her pain. "Emily, listen to me. I didn't know. If I had known, I would have been there for you. I swear to you, I would have been there." She looked at me, tears welling in her blue eyes. "Why didn't you fight for me? Why didn't you try to find out the truth?" Her question hit me like a punch to the gut. "I believed what Sheila told me," I admitted, my voice shaking. "I believed her when she said you weren't mine. I didn't think I had the right to question it." Emily shook her head, her tears spilling over. "You both lied to me. You both let me grow up without knowing the truth." Sheila tried to reach out to her, but Emily pulled away, her voice breaking. "I need some time to think." Before either of us could say another word, she turned and ran, disappearing down the park path. I watched her go, my heart breaking into 1,000 pieces. "She hates us," Sheila said softly, her face streaked with tears. I turned to her, my anger boiling over. "This is your fault, Sheila. You lied to both of us. You destroyed any chance of a normal relationship between me and my daughter." She nodded, her shoulders slumping. "I know, and I'll regret it for the rest of my life." I didn't respond. There was nothing more to say to her. Without another word, I turned and walked away, leaving her standing alone under the tree. The next few days were some of the longest of my life. I waited anxiously for a call or a text from Emily, but it never came. I tried reaching out to her, but she didn't respond. The silence was unbearable, each passing hour making me fear I had lost her for good. Then, one evening, just as I was about to give up hope, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Emily. "Can we meet? Just the two of us?" My heart leapt into my throat as I quickly replied, "Of course. When and where?" We arranged to meet at a small diner in her neighborhood the next day. I barely slept that night, my mind racing with possibilities. Would she forgive me? Would she want me in her life? Or was this just her way of saying goodbye? When I arrived at the diner, Emily was already there, sitting in a booth by the window. She looked nervous but determined, her hands folded neatly on the table. I approached cautiously, my heart pounding. "Hi, Emily," I said, sliding into the seat across from her. "Hi," she replied, her voice quiet but steady. For a moment, neither of us spoke, the silence heavy with unspoken words. Finally, she broke the tension. "I've been thinking a lot about what you and Mom told me," she said, her eyes fixed on the table. "It's a lot to process, but I want to know more about you, about us." Her words hit me like a lifeline, and I felt a surge of hope. "I'd like that," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "I'll tell you anything you want to know." And so, we talked. For the first time, we began to build a bridge over the years of lies and betrayal. It wasn't easy, and I knew the road ahead would be long. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like I had something worth fighting for. The conversation with Emily at the diner was a glimmer of hope, but I knew it wasn't the end of the storm. It was just the beginning. She was opening the door to me, cautiously, but I could see the pain and confusion still lingering in her eyes. I couldn't blame her. Sheila's lies had ripped through both of us, and it would take more than one heartfelt talk to piece everything back together. Over the next few weeks, Emily and I started meeting regularly. Sometimes we'd grab coffee or lunch, and other times we'd just walk through the park, talking about everything and nothing. She was careful with her questions, testing the waters, but it was clear she wanted to know about my life, what I'd been through, how I'd ended up here, and most importantly, why I hadn't fought harder to be part of her life. Those were the hardest questions to answer. I couldn't give her excuses, no matter how much I wanted to blame Sheila for everything. Emily deserved honesty, and I owed it to her to take responsibility for my part in the mess. One afternoon, as we sat on a park bench, Emily turned to me with a question that made my stomach tighten. "Why didn't you fight for me?" she asked softly, her gaze fixed on the ground. "Even if Mom lied, didn't you wonder? Didn't you want to know the truth?" I took a deep breath, my chest heavy with guilt. "I did wonder," I admitted, my voice low, "but I trusted what Sheila told me. At the time, our marriage was falling apart, and I don't know, I was broken. When she said you weren't mine, I believed her because it was easier than questioning everything. And for that, I'm sorry. I should have fought harder. You deserved better." She looked up at me then, her blue eyes searching mine. "It hurt, you know," she said. "Growing up, I always felt like something was missing. Even before I found out about the adoption, I knew there was a piece of my story that didn't make sense. Meeting you, it's helping, but it's still hard." I nodded, my throat tight. "I can't undo the past, Emily, but I'm here now, and I'll do whatever it takes to make it right." She gave me a small, hesitant smile. "I believe you, but it's going to take time." As Emily and I worked to build our relationship, Sheila continued to linger on the outskirts of our lives. She reached out occasionally, trying to involve herself in our meetings, but Emily made it clear she wanted space from her mother. I couldn't blame her. Sheila's lies had hurt Emily in ways I could only imagine, and I wasn't about to push her to forgive before she was ready. But Sheila wasn't one to stay in the background for long. One evening, as I was leaving my house, I found her waiting on my porch. Her face was pale, and there was a desperation in her eyes that made my stomach churn. "Tom," she said, her voice trembling, "can we talk? Please." I sighed, already regretting opening the door. "What is it, Sheila?" She stepped closer, wringing her hands. "It's about Emily. I know she doesn't want to talk to me right now, but I need you to help me. I need you to tell her that I'm sorry, that I never meant to hurt her." I crossed my arms, leaning against the doorframe. "Sheila, you've made your bed. Emily's hurting, and it's going to take time for her to trust you again. You can't rush this." "I know," she said, her voice breaking. "But what if I don't have time? What if she never forgives me?" There it was again, that note of fear I'd heard in her voice at the cafe. I narrowed my eyes, studying her. "What's going on, Sheila? Why do you keep saying you don't have time?" She looked away, her hands trembling. "I went to the doctor," she said finally. "It's cancer, Tom. Stage 3. The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. For a moment, I didn't know what to say. Despite everything Sheila had done, despite all the pain she'd caused, I hadn't expected this. What does that mean?" I asked cautiously. She wiped a tear from her cheek, her voice barely above a whisper. "It means I don't know how much time I have left. I'm starting treatment, but I don't know if it's going to work. And all I can think about is Emily. I need to make things right with her before it's too late." I stared at her, my emotions a tangled mess. Anger, pity, guilt. They all swirled together, making it impossible to think clearly. Finally, I shook my head. "I don't know if I can help you, Sheila. Emily needs to heal in her own time. You can't force her to forgive you." She nodded, her shoulders slumping. "I understand. I hope she can find it in her heart to give me another chance, before it's too late." Sheila turned and walked away, leaving me standing on the porch, my mind racing. I didn't know what to do. Part of me wanted to protect Emily from any more pain, but another part of me knew Sheila's time might truly be running out. If I didn't help them mend their relationship, Emily might regret it for the rest of her life. The next time I met with Emily, I told her the truth about Sheila's diagnosis. She listened quietly, her expression unreadable. When I finished, she looked out at the park, her hands clenched in her lap. "I don't know if I can forgive her," she said softly. "Not yet." "You don't have to," I said. "Not until you're ready. But if you ever want to talk to her, I'll be there to support you. Whatever you decide." She nodded, her blue eyes distant. "I need to think about it." As we sat in silence, I realized how far we'd come, and how far we still had to go. But for the first time, I felt like we were moving in the right direction. Together, weeks turned into months, and the weight of Sheila's diagnosis loomed over us like a storm cloud. Emily and I continued to meet regularly, growing closer with every conversation. She was still cautious, still guarded, but I could see her walls slowly coming down. Each laugh, each story she shared, was like a brick being removed, and I held on to every moment like a lifeline. But the question of Sheila lingered. Emily had yet to decide if she wanted to see her mother, and I respected her need for space. Still, I could tell it was eating at her. The knowledge of Sheila's illness hung over her, a quiet but persistent reminder of the ticking clock. One afternoon, as we sat on a bench overlooking the lake, Emily finally brought it up. "I've been thinking about Mom," she said, her voice soft. "About what you told me." I looked at her, waiting for her to continue. "I'm still angry," she admitted, her fingers twisting in her lap. "But I don't want her to die thinking I hate her." My chest tightened at her words. "You don't have to forgive her, Emily. Not yet. But if you're ready to talk to her, I'll be there with you. Whatever you need." She nodded, her gaze fixed on the water. "I think I want to see her. Just once. To tell her how I feel." The next day, I called Sheila and arranged for the three of us to meet at her house. It was a modest place, smaller than the home we had shared years ago, but it suited her. When Emily and I arrived, Sheila was already waiting on the porch, her face pale and drawn from the effects of her treatment. She stood as we approached, her hands trembling at her sides. "Emily," she said softly, her voice thick with emotion. Emily hesitated, glancing at me for reassurance. I gave her a small nod, and she stepped forward. "I'm still mad at you," Emily said, her voice steady but firm. "What you did, it hurt. A lot. And it's going to take me a long time to get over it." Sheila nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I know, and I don't expect you to forgive me. I'm so sorry, Emily, for everything." Emily took a deep breath, her shoulders relaxing slightly. "I don't hate you, Mom. I need time, but I wanted you to know that I'm here, and I hope you get better." The relief on Sheila's face was palpable. She stepped forward cautiously, as if afraid to scare Emily away, and for the first time in years, they hugged. It was tentative and awkward, but it was a start. Over the following weeks, Emily visited Sheila a few more times. Their relationship was far from perfect, but they were trying. And in the midst of it all, something surprising happened. I found myself letting go of my own anger. Seeing Sheila so vulnerable, so desperate to make things right, reminded me that even the people who hurt us the most are still human. It didn't erase the pain she had caused, but it made it easier to move forward. As for Emily and me, our bond only grew stronger. She started calling me Dad, a word I never thought I'd hear again. It wasn't always easy. There were still moments of tension, moments when the weight of the past felt too heavy, but we faced it together. One evening, as we sat on my porch watching the sunset, Emily turned to me with a small smile. "You know, I used to think I didn't need a dad, that I was fine on my own. But now, I'm glad I have you." Her words brought tears to my eyes, and I reached over, squeezing her hand. "I'm glad I have you too, Emily. More than you'll ever know." Sheila's health continued to decline, and though her prognosis was uncertain, she faced it with a strength I hadn't seen in years. Emily stood by her side as much as she could, and I supported them both in whatever way I could. It wasn't the ending I had envisioned, but it was ours. And for the first time in a long time, I felt at peace. Life doesn't always give us second chances, but when it does, they're worth fighting for. Emily and I had found our way back to each other, and no matter what the future held, I knew we'd face it together.